Our story begins 1 year after everything fell apart, as Anakin Skywalker stands on a rocky ledge overlooking the strong waves crashing onto the jagged rocks below. He was on the planet Seatos, remembering everything. 1 year ago, Anakin cut down Mace Windu, but quickly realized he made the wrong move. After Mace was thrown out of the window, Anakin tried immediately turning on Palpatine. But the Dark Lord had felt rejuvenated with Anakin seemingly by his side. He'd used the unlimited power, blasting Anakin into the wall, scorching his skin, burning him, and ultimately arresting Anakin for treason with the Jedi. Anakin was locked away, hidden to the galaxy, as Order 66 was executed without him. All of the Jedi died. Obi-Wan and Yoda confronted Darth Sidious, and Obi-Wan died in the fight. Padme tried rising up against Palpatine. She was assassinated before she could give birth, as Palpatine said that she was siding with the Jedi. It was Ahsoka and Rex who heard of Anakin's imprisonment. They rescued him, but as they were trying to escape Coruscant, Sidious caught up to them, killing Ahsoka and Rex as Anakin was forced to escape alone. He lost everyone, and in the horror and sadness of it all, he even lost the ability to use the Force for the most part. The light side was gone. The Empire reigned. Anakin had felt hopeless, and he came to this world because ancient rumors said that it held the answers of how to get to a new galaxy. That was all that Anakin wanted now, to leave everything behind. He wasn't a hero, he failed, and Anakin slowly stood up, preparing himself to begin searching for the answers he needed, when suddenly, the winds began to pick up here on Seatos. Anakin tried to step away from the edge, but it were as if invisible limbs were reaching out in the wind, pulling him at the edge. Anakin tried to resist, but deep in the trees, he saw something shimmering in a faint blue light. For a moment, Anakin swore that it was Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan looking at him, and then Anakin felt his boots slip off of the rocks. He fell over the edge, down below, to the heavy crashing waves and sharp rocks. Anakin closed his eyes, expecting pain and death, but it never came. The loud winds would fade into a stillness in his ears, like a calm ocean, and Anakin opened his eyes, realizing he fell into some sort of portal. He was no longer seeing the gray skies of Seatos, but instead seeing the beautiful galaxy all around him. Bridges, portals, memories. Anakin was overwhelmed, but suddenly, standing in front of him were Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka, the Jedi who found him, the Jedi who trained him, and the Jedi that he trained, all smiling to Anakin, telling him that the path of the Chosen One is not yet complete, but it will not go the way that he may have once thought. Anakin was told that he has a chance to restart back to where it all began. He can help to reshape the galaxy if he chooses this path. Anakin asked why now, and it was because he was about to abandon his own galaxy. So, bringing him back to where it all began is a much better alternative, and now Anakin just must choose where to go. Anakin was still overwhelmed, but he recognized that this was a choice that needed to be made. He wanted to go back to the office with Windu and Palpatine, but no, that was too early. Anakin thought about the Battle of Geonosis. Maybe he could change everything there. No, Palpatine was already in power, and Anakin quickly realized what must be done to truly save the galaxy from the Sith. He must ensure that Palpatine never rises to become the leader of the galaxy. He must go back to his earliest days as a Jedi. A portal opened, and Anakin looked inside to see Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Padme, Jar Jar, and a younger version of himself on a Coruscant landing pad. The group would get into a Royal Naboo starship, and Anakin took a deep breath before stepping inside of the portal, emerging into the dark Coruscant night. He was looking out at the city skyline, feeling the light side of the Force in a time well before the war. It was so warm, peaceful, it reminded him of his life before the war. But as Anakin looked around, just embracing it all, something seemed to catch his eye. It was the glint of a telescope, far in the distance, that seemed to have been watching the Naboo ship rise up. Anakin's curiosity would get the best of him, and he began running all the way through the Coruscant streets towards this person who was spying on the group. After a while, Anakin reached the area, standing atop a tall apartment building, looking down to see two hooded figures now meeting up. One was Palpatine, and the other, it was immune taller than Palpatine, wearing a breathing mask, covering his nose and face. Anakin quickly realized who this must be. It had to be the wise Sith Lord Darth Plagueis. Anakin was shocked by this. In his mind, after learning about Plagueis, he imagined that the Sith Master died well before Qui-Gon found him. So, curiously, Anakin would tail the two Sith all the way into a penthouse suite. And from a distant building, Anakin used his own Jedi scopes to look into the penthouse. He watched the two Sith celebrate Palpatine's nomination for Chancellor. Anakin knew that tomorrow was election night, but at this point, Palpatine was the heavy favorite to win, and Anakin just kept watching as the two Sith kept drinking, until Palpatine decided it was time to leave for the night. But as Palpatine walked to the door, Anakin felt a wave of darkness suddenly hit him as Palpatine came to a stop. The Sith apprentice suddenly realized it was time to do away with his master. Anakin would watch the tragedy of Darth Plagueis unfold as Sidious killed his master in his drunken sleep. Plagueis was killed with a Force explosion that Anakin felt across the buildings, and Sidious was thrown into the wall by it. Inside the penthouse, Sidious would soon be awoken by his comlink. He was being contacted by Darth Maul and the Neimoidians. He would learn that Amidala and the Jedi have convinced the Gungans to create an army to take on the Federation. Sidious said that this was an unexpected move from the Queen, much more aggressive than he anticipated. He would tell Maul to be patient, let them make the first move, and when the time comes, wipe them all out. Sidious ended the message, and he cremated the body of Darth Plagueis, and as Sidious moved like a shadow throughout the city, erasing all evidence, he felt something strange in the Force through it all. It were as if he was being watched, but every time Sidious turned around, no one was there. He wondered if perhaps the spirit of Darth Plagueis was somehow lingering in the Force, and it gave him some real paranoia. But all night long, it was Anakin that followed Darth Sidious all throughout Coruscant. He was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He knew how powerful this man was, but Anakin also found it fascinating to watch the Dark Lord pull all of the strings even before war. And as soon as the sun began to rise on Coruscant, Sidious once more received word from Naboo. He would learn that everything went wrong for Maul and the Federation. Somehow, the Gungan army beat the droids. The Federation command ship was blown up from the inside, shutting down every single droid at once. Darth Maul was killed by the Jedi, but Qui-Gon also died, a trade Sidious was willing to make. And Sidious would learn all of this from one of his most important allies, Dooku. Sidious had Dooku on Coruscant, furthering the plans for the clone army. Dooku recently infiltrated the Jedi Temple, deleted Kamino from the archives, and upon learning of Qui-Gon's death, Dooku requested to meet in person with Sidious to discuss their future. Sidious agreed to this. He could sense Dooku's conflict. Something in the Force told Sidious that a test would be coming for Dooku, and with Maul's demise, it was time for Dooku to either embrace the Sith as his true apprentice, or to be discarded. So, as the first light was hitting Coruscant, Sidious made his way to the 500 Republica building, and then disappeared underground. Anakin curiously followed, and what he found was truly astounding. Stretching all the way from the hidden basement of 500 Republica all the way to the industrial sector of Coruscant was a long, hidden tunnel system, and Anakin could hear the faint hum of a speeder flying off into the industrial sector area, so he took off running in the same direction. Meanwhile, outside of the Jedi Temple, Dooku was standing in front of the Great Tree, a place where he used to bring Qui-Gon as a boy. Dooku recalled how fascinated Qui-Gon was with the tree, having been born on Coruscant, a planet of steel and stone. It was so beautiful to the boy. Dooku had fond memories of his time with Qui-Gon, a time where everything seemed so much more simple, a time before he met Sidious. And now, Qui-Gon was dead at the hand of the Sith that Dooku had refused to stop. He'd chosen his path, but Dooku would be lying to himself if he said he wasn't having any doubts. Master Yaddle then came to Dooku, telling him that the Council is leaving soon for the Naboo funeral, and he's welcome to join them. Dooku couldn't go along. He couldn't bring himself to be there, knowing the full truth of it all. He also knew that the election for Chancellor was coming today, and he'd contacted Sidious for a quick meeting to discuss their future. Dooku walked away, got into a speeder, and took off for the industrial sector. But he'd failed to realize that he was now being followed by Master Yaddle, and Sidious failed to realize that he was being followed by Anakin Skywalker. As Anakin ran through the hidden tunnels, he remembered everything that led up to this moment, and he knew the moment was upon him where he could save the galaxy from the tyranny of the Sith. Finally, he would arrive to the Lemurge building, sneaking up through the levels to find Sidious meeting with someone that Anakin recognized. It was Dooku, but a version of Dooku that was far younger than Anakin had ever known. A version that had not been fully corrupted by the dark side of the Force. Anakin listened as Dooku listed off Sifo-Dyas, Kamino, the clones, and he asked aloud how many have died for his actions. Sidious said that this is the price of freedom, but then something happened that surprised Dooku, Sidious, and even Anakin. Master Yaddle, a Jedi Anakin only ever heard about after her mysterious disappearance, emerged to confront the Sith. After Yaddle tried telling Dooku that it's not too late to come back, Sidious told Dooku to kill her, and then a blue lightsaber would ignite, but it didn't come from Dooku. Sidious and Dooku quickly turned to find a different, unrecognizable Jedi had emerged from the back of the hangar. Sidious pulled out a red saber, Dooku ignited his blue one, and they both demanded to know who he is. They could both feel Anakin's power in the Force, and Anakin slowly spun his saber around in his hand, pacing the dark hangar, and he told the Sith that he is the one who will bring balance to the Force. It is his destiny. Sidious found himself more intrigued than angry for the moment. He knew that Qui-Gon just discovered a boy that he proclaimed was the Chosen One, born to bring balance to the Force. He knew that boy's name was Anakin Skywalker. So, Sidious decided to humor the idea, asking this man if he was this Anakin. Anakin smiled slightly, and for the first time since his defeat in Palpatine's office, he truly felt like himself. For so long since his defeat, the name Anakin was one that he carried with failure and disappointment, with death, sadness, despair, and loss. But today, the name Anakin Skywalker was one reborn, of balance and of hope. He didn't need to give Sidious an answer. The Dark Lord already knew the truth. He knew that the light side of the Force was so powerful that it brought Anakin here to reject the darkness altogether. Anakin looked across the room to Yaddle, who was more confused than anyone. Anakin just nodded to her. Yaddle nodded back, and they would run in. Dooku attacked Yaddle, while Sidious attacked Anakin, and they would fight throughout the hangar. Anakin charged at Sidious with fury born from the devastating defeat in his former timeline, blue saber soaring through the air with unbelievable speed, each strike aimed at the shoulder, thigh, neck, and head of the Dark Lord. It was faster and stronger every strike. It quickly became a series of moves, guided by a memory of vengeance and grief. Sidious parried with quick strikes, flowing through the hangar with speed and swings that showed off his monstrous power. His red saber clashes were mixed with his laughter with every swing. Anakin swung hard, then both of them were launched a few steps backwards. Anakin held his saber in front of him, grounding himself, and he ran back in, driving his saber low as Sidious spun and slashed across his side, forcing him back with a series of jabs. Anakin deflected, then countered by slamming his boot right into Sidious's chest, using the burst of movement to send Sidious tumbling backwards into a wall. Anakin leapt high, bringing the saber down hard as Sidious absorbed the strike, getting into a saber lock with Skywalker. Across the hangar, Yaddle moved with Dooku, striking at each other out of desperation. Suddenly, there was hesitation in Dooku's strikes, and Yaddle could feel it, a simple tremor of conflict, flickering behind his angered expression. Yaddle was bouncing off walls, flipping behind him, cutting low and high, but not truly aiming to kill. She could feel Dooku wavering, as if this emergence of Skywalker was striking at Dooku's core. But, for now, Dooku used his anger and used a swing of fury that barely missed her head. Yaddle was purely using defense now, as her presence in the Force was a soft whisper, begging Dooku to remember who he once was. And back with Anakin and Sidious, the lock of their sabers broke, as Sidious grinned through the sparks, quickly twisting his wrist, shoving Anakin off balance. In a blur of speed, Sidious spun his saber and cut through Anakin's hilt, shattering it. The blue light would die out. Sidious extended his hand, unleashing a torrent of force lightning that tore through the air, hitting both Anakin and Yaddle as they turned towards each other. Yaddle fell to her knees, electricity crawling across her skin. Anakin screamed through the agony, body convulsing, realizing he was right back in Palpatine's office when everything had fallen apart. The lightning brought back so many terrible memories, but still, he couldn't give up. Anakin turned, his gaze locked on Dooku, and through the pain, he yelled at Dooku that Qui-Gon was the one that brought him back here. Dooku stood frozen, listening to Anakin say that he was here because of Qui-Gon, because of the light, and he believed there was still good in Dooku. The words cut deep into his soul. Anakin felt Dooku's darkness begin to shift, and this was all the hope that Anakin needed. Through the sheer pain of the lightning, Anakin managed to reach up, catching it with his open hand. Finally, he was beginning to push the lightning back towards Sidious. He called to Dooku, telling him to help. Finally, Dooku stepped in between Skywalker and Sidious, blocking the lightning, and as Anakin was freed from it, he flipped into the air, calling Yaddle's green blade into his hands, as he landed behind Sidious and sliced right through his torso. The Dark Lord gasped as the lightning stopped, and he fell to the floor, dead. The darkness died with him. Dooku quickly turned to Yaddle, helping her to her feet, and they both turned back to Anakin Skywalker. But Anakin was gone, and it would be around a full day later, out in the Outer Rim, where Shmi Skywalker was preparing to go to sleep, and she peered into Anakin's old room. She had to wipe away a tear, as she deeply missed Anakin, though she knew he had to be living a much better life now, a life she could only dream for him before. He was a Jedi. She couldn't be happier, but still, she of course missed her boy. But as she was shutting out the lights, she heard a faint knock on the door. She could only hope it wasn't Watto or someone working for him. But as she opened the door, Shmi looked up to see a taller man in Jedi robes. Within seconds, Shmi recognized her son. Anakin, through his own tears, just embraced his mother with everything she had. He promised to explain everything as they just sat together. Out on Coruscant, as the votes for Chancellor were being counted, the Senate would soon realize that Palpatine was missing. In his place, Dooku would take the second chance to speak to the galaxy and reveal everything to the Jedi and to the Senate. Palpatine was not who he said he was. He was working to create conflict, war, and use it to tear down the Republic and replace it with his empire. Dooku still believed that the Republic was broken. He still believed that the Jedi blindly served a Senate that was failing its people. But Dooku now saw that the way of the Sith was not the way of fixing this. And now, with the Sith dead, the corruption that was being sown by the Sith would finally begin to unravel. Dooku would not be able to escape cleanly because of his crimes. He was indirectly involved with the murder of Sifo Dyas, but still, his words would inspire the Jedi Council to begin separating from the Senate, and this would be the first move in restoring the Jedi to what they were meant to be. The young version of Anakin Skywalker was still around, and would now be trained by Obi-Wan Kenobi, and only Dooku and Yaddle knew that there was an older version of him roaming the galaxy. But they both agreed to keep this a secret. Whatever life the older Anakin wanted, he could have, and Dooku vowed to help guide the younger version of Anakin to become a Jedi that helps those in need. As for the version of Anakin that time-traveled, he would just settle in with his mother, working to free her from slavery, as the Lars family would eventually take both of them in. 24-year-old Anakin would live with Shmi, Klieg, Owen, and Beru Lars, as the galaxy began to reform itself in a better way, without the plague of the Sith tearing it apart. Anakin would watch from a distance, as the Jedi Order became something that he always wished it was for him, and he knew the younger version of himself was going to thrive in this new galaxy. The version of Anakin would finally allow himself to move on from Padme, out of love, and he would marry a woman on Ryloth, one of the planets closest to Tatooine, as he was living a simple life, away from politics and Jedi, while the young Anakin grew, and eventually fell in love with Senator Amidala of Naboo. And folks, that is our story for today. One I enjoyed quite a bit, and one that one that I hope you enjoyed as well. Still getting over a bit of a cold that is affecting my voice a bit, but a story I really wanted to get done and just really write out and, I don't know, talk about, because, well, it's fun to do, and it's what I do. But, yeah, time travel ones are so interesting. There are a million different ways, well, no there's not, but there's a lot of different ways you can go. The world between worlds, you know, it's the easiest way. I've done time travel stories in the past where, I guess, Anakin, like, dies, or Vader dies, but, like, instead of dying, is just brought back to a different time. I've tried exploring many different paths where, you know, Anakin time travels, and the version of himself that would be there disappears. And in this one, I wanted to make it so there were two versions of Anakin when it all wrapped up. One that's still a Jedi, but being trained in a better way, you know, without war and Palpatine and all the bad stuff. And then the other version of Anakin that's, you know, getting to live as he may have always wanted, just with his mother in a nice, easy, simple family. Really was cool to me to be able to write out both of their endings like that. It's, you know, it's a happy ending for Anakin, but two Anakins. So, I mean, always enjoyable. Yeah, other than that, Qui-Gon still dies in this story, but I think it's, you know, he's meant to. Anakin's not brought... I am stuttering a lot right now. Anakin is not brought back to save him in the story. Brought back pretty much to just stop Palpatine, so... Yeah, and of course, the Tales of the Jedi episode, that's what it was. If you've never watched Tales of the Jedi, I highly recommend it. The Dooku arc is one of my favorite things in all of Star Wars media, so check that out, truly. Anyways, appreciate you guys checking this video out. Let me know what you want to see next, and I'll see you all in the next video.